I got involved in local politics several years ago, and I just felt like as queer people, we were always represent, and this is no shade to the queer people who were in office in our city council before. They were great, and a lot of them endorsed my campaign, and I was very proud to have their support. But it was always just like gays and lesbians, which is great. We love the gays and lesbians. Work. We stan. But there was never non-binary representation or trans representation in our city council and in very few governing bodies across the country. So I was excited to be the first non-binary candidate for city office in New York and the first drag artist. That is one part of who I am, but I'm also a gig worker who works in the nightlife industry, and I know what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck.
Hi, I'm Derek Mills. Welcome to the Glow Podcast. Mark Osmundsen, a Glow teacher, returns as a guest host this week to interview his friend Marti Gould Cummings. Marti is one of the best-known drag performers in New York City, and they were the first non-binary person to campaign for city council in New York. Marti is a founder of Hell's Kitchen Democrats, a community group that engages people to organize for progressive issues, and they are on the board of the Ali Forney Center, the largest LGBTQ community center in the United States, helping queer youth who experience homelessness. Marti and Mark discuss the importance of having queer and non-binary people in positions of power in city, state, and federal government. The journey to activism hasn't been easy and comes with a trigger warning. In this particular episode, Marti shares about their struggles with bipolar 2 disorder, depression, and a suicide attempt. But knowing you're not alone, Marti says, can contribute to healing. Here's Mark's conversation with Marti Gould Cummings.
Hello, friends. Welcome on back to the Glow Podcast. My name is Mark, and I am so thrilled to be here again with you all today to have an amazing conversation with the incredible Marti Gould Cummings. I'm so excited to have you here. How are you, love?
Hi, I am so grateful to join you today.
I was seriously trying to remember how we met or however long I've known each other, and I seriously have no idea.
I'm so bad at that game. Like, I feel like, I've been in New York for 17 years, and
okay.
I just don't know how I know anybody,
Exactly, yeah.
People just come into my life, which is wonderful. But I don't know how I met any of my friends.
Yeah, I can't. I seriously could not remember. So I've been here for 13. Yeah, it'll be 13 years this week, which is really crazy. Yeah, and I just could not remember how we met. But Marti is an incredible performer. I dare say icon and legend. Okay. I'm going to talk you up. I dare say here in New York. So it's just so wonderful to have you and to share in this conversation, because your work is really important, both as a performer, as a political activist, and just as a human being living life on this journey. So Marti, I just want to start a little bit. I want to just allow you to take the mic for a moment, because I've been really trying to allow people to talk about especially their young queer history, because I really believe that all young queer children come from something. Empathy is usually made through incredible pain. So I really want to hear a little bit about your story as a young person, and what kind of brought you to your work today.
Oh boy.
It's quite a loaded question to start with, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh gosh, I don't even know where to begin. Where my childhood?
Yeah, I just want to know how maybe the arts impacted you as a young person, or
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of have that cliche upbringing of like, I grew up on a farm and I went to Catholic school and I was like,
yes.
you know,
there we go.
Very cliche. And, you know, was like super effeminate, and I played with my Barbies and my Polly Pockets and my Little Ponies. Yes. So I didn't really have a lot of friends when I was in like elementary school. And I remember like my 3rd grade birthday, like no one came. And so my mom like called all of my cousins and was like, you gotta come over. Yeah, but like how like the arts kind of saved me. Like, I mean, I was so queer. Like my cousin Sophie, she lived in North Carolina and she would come to visit. So like my grandmother's farm was next to her brother's farm, which was next to their sister's farm. And my cousin Sophie is my first cousin once removed. So like our grandmothers were sisters, but we're the same age. So she would come to visit every summer and we would hang out like all summer long. And she was like my best friend. And she had this black duffel bag, and it was like her bag of like dress up. So I would always like play dress up with her, and I like loved it, and like all the skirts and the dresses and the costume jewelry and all of that stuff. And so that's not really something that like, you know, was looked kindly upon by like the outside world, I guess. And I like remember this distinct memory of when I was really young and it was Thanksgiving and everybody was over our house, and I was with Sophie in my room, and she had like her little duffel bag with her, and I like put like all of this stuff on, and I came downstairs and I was so excited to show everybody like my cute dress and jewelry, and my dad like yanked me into the other room. I was like, you have to take that off. Like, you can't wear that. Like, you can never wear that. And it like scarred me. I was like, there's something wrong with me. Like, there's something like so effed up about me. Like, why is this bad? Whatever. But now as like an adult, I know like my dad who like sits the front row of my drag shows and is like super proud and like has all the rainbow stickers on his car and all that crap. And but I now like look back and I know that it wasn't him being like, you can't do this. It was him being like, you can't do this because other people won't understand it, and it's going to make your life really difficult and hard, you know. And you know, so he was trying to be loving, but it didn't really come out the best way. But like the art saved me because I remember Sophie took me to see, again, very cliche, she took me to see a community theater production of Annie, and I was so excited seeing people like my age on stage, just like living their life, singing and dancing and all this stuff. And I was like, oh my God, I have to do that. And so I went home and I told my mom, I was like, I have to do that. I have to do that. So I like signed up for like the summer theater camp, and I was like hooked, you know. And it like helped me like make friends who were like me, and who liked the things I liked, and it wasn't like weird. Like I wasn't weird there. And it just was such an important like pivotal moment in my young self, because it was the first time I really felt like seen in a positive way. It was amazing.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of the same for me as well. That's why I think that even as adults and important in my work is about creating community, because it wasn't until I had found that community through dance, through performing, that I really started to be able to come into myself. And it's funny that you talk about that too, because I remember distinctly I used to grab the the little blankets or quilts and things, and I would drape them and I would make these long dresses. And I remember my mom, who again is like my biggest fan now, and again, it comes out of self-love, but I remember her saying distinctly, act like a boy. You're a boy. Like, act like a boy. And I was like, okay, but like, I'm also just like me. And like, I just love that. You know, I was always so confused by the whole like act like a boy type of thing.
It's so weird how we like gender like kids playing. Like, it's so weird. Like, I have this memory of like, I was in kindergarten and Mrs. Budd, I remember she was very pregnant. So that kid is probably like 30 now. And this girl, Bianca, I remember her name because she was a little bad word. And we were playing house and in kindergarten, like who cares? You know, we're playing house, whatever, with a little kitchen set. And I remember like, I was like, I want to like be the mom and like whatever. And she like tattletaled on me for wanting to be the mom. And Mrs. Budd was like, you can't be the mom. She was like, you have to play the dad. Like moms are in the kitchen. And like, I remember that she was like, moms are in the kitchen, dads. And I was like, and now looking back, I was like, moms are in the kitchen. Like how screwed up is that? And I remember like telling my mom this, and my mom, like growing up, like my dad did all the cooking. So I think
same actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think my mom was like offended by that. Not that I like wasn't allowed to play the mom. She was more offended by that. And my mom was a teacher at the school. And I remember she like went in and like kind of yelled at Mrs. Budd, which was kind of cool of my mom.
I mean, yeah, because these conditionings happen at such a young age that it can be very, very influential, not just for you, but for everybody around you.
It was just so silly. Like, I'm like, what? Like, what? Bianca, go drink some water. Like,
yeah. Take a seat.
Yeah, go touch grass. Like, relax.
Yes, get your feet in that grass. So I think this is a good place because I want to, obviously, you all have heard a little bit about Marti in the bio and their incredible career as a drag performer. And I want to talk about Baby Shark.
Okay, do you know what's so funny?
Which we will link in the show notes.
The audience can't see this, but I have on my desk a baby shark that somebody gifted me at a show. Yeah, Baby Shark was such a weird phenomenon, I guess you can call it. Like I was doing a drag brunch with Izzy Uncut, who's an amazing drag artist. We did a weekly drag brunch, and you know, drag brunch is during the daytime. It's not at night. So like it's in a restaurant and kids can come because it's not 21 and over. And, you know, we now today, like Republicans are very up in arms about kids going to drag shows and that whole nonsense. But this little kid, God, this was several years ago now. So the kid's probably like in like first grade now, but like he was like 2 or 3 at the time, or 3 or 4. I don't know. He was little. We were doing like a drag roulette, which is a lot of drag artists do at the end of their show, where they are like, okay, we did our numbers. Now you, the audience, get to pick what we perform, and we're going to lip sync it whether we know it or not, and blah, 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 blah. And so I saw this little kid, and he was so cute. And I was like, oh, and what do you want to hear? Like Lady Gaga, you know, like being silly. And he was like, Baby Shark. And I was like, oh, okay, we'll do Baby Shark. Sure. And somebody sent me the video of it after, and I put it on my Twitter just because I was like, oh, this was like a really cute moment at my brunch, like how sweet, whatever. And sorry if you can hear my dog like whining in the background. But I put it on my Twitter, and then I went to my friend's house to actually celebrate their twins' 1 year birthday. And I was like, oh, do the kids like Baby Shark? And my friends were like, yeah, they're like obsessed with it. You know, they like bop their little like toddler heads to it. And I was like, oh, well, like look at this video from my brunch. And like I had posted it maybe an hour before, and it had like 10,000 views. And I was like, whoa, that's kind of cool. And then by Woodrow, stop whining. I'm doing a podcast. So by like the end, like by the time I left their house, it had like 500,000 views or something. And I was like, what is going on? And then the next day I had all these news outlets like reaching out to me because the video had been like shared so many times, and it was like getting a lot of positive feedback. But of course it was also getting a lot of really crazy, like people like calling me like a pedophile and all this stuff. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, yeah, what are you seeing in this video? You know? And it was really kind of like traumatic in a way, because it was such a joyful moment for this little kid and for everyone who was there. You know, it was really a beautiful, joyful moment that kind of got like crapped on by like the alt-right. And so I was like, well, let's continue the positivity of it. And so I had produced a reality show a couple years before, and I called the other producers, the production company, and I was like, can we make a music video, a Baby Shark music video, and we can link like the Ali Fournay Center for Homeless LGBTQ Youth and the Hedrick Martin Institute, which is home of the Harvey Milk High School. And I was like, can we link them and like try to raise some money for these organizations off of this thing? You know, let's like raise some money for queer kids. And so we made the video and it was great. And that went viral. And then AOC shared that video. So then I had like all these people who were like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is so cute. Like, we love it. We're going to donate, blah, blah, blah. But then AOC shared it. So it was like an even bigger onslaught of like crazy alt-right people. Like coming for me. And this like thing. And so then all these news outlets, so then I was writing like all like Good Morning America and Inside It and all this stuff, which is like cool, fun, whatever. So then I got invited to do a TED Talk about how drag is for everyone, and drag is about leadership and teaching kids about acceptance and self-love and kindness and spreading joy, and how cyberbullying is really just like toxic. And I based my TED Talk like loosely off of Monica Lewinsky's TED Talk, which if you're listening and you haven't watched her TED Talk, please go watch Monica Lewinsky's TED Talk. It will change your entire life. And
it's incredible.
Monica and I have a lot of mutual friends, and we had connected through them and connected at some event. I cried when I met her. I was like so starstruck. But we like kept in touch, and I had mentioned to her that I did this TED Talk and how hers had like inspired me, because there was a huge portion of my TED Talk about cyberbullying, and she talks in hers about being kind of like the first person to be cyberbullied.
The first person to be publicly shamed via the internet.
Yeah. And so then she shared my TED Talk. So then I had the original Baby Shark video, then the music video that AOC was like all about, and then the TED Talk that Monica shared. So it became like this even bigger thing. But I'm really grateful for it, because it opened a lot of doors in a way to kind of have a dialogue about drag that now like has even further to, you know, this was a couple years ago, but now that dialogue is really heating up around Drag Queen Story Hour, where you have these alt-right people showing up at libraries with like guns and like screaming and shouting at families as they're going in, and they're like, you're going to traumatize these kids. And I'm like, no, actually you're traumatizing the kids, because you're outside with the gun screaming when the drag queen or drag king or whoever it is just trying to read The Princess and the Pea. Like,
well, this is why I wanted to talk to you about this, because now it has become a point of attack in so many of these circles, because I just don't understand how somebody dressed up in a fabulous costume reading a book to young people that are absolutely mesmerized and showing what it means to be authentically yourself.
It's because they're grasping at straws, right? Like, we know that the vast majority of people support queer people in this country. And so like white supremacy is grasping at straws and is going after, and I say white supremacy because the alt-right is, I mean, they're the KKK with their hoods off, and red caps have replaced the hoods, and they're going after, you know, Black people and immigrants and trans people and, you know, queer people. And so drag queens are a great distraction for them to talk about, as they know that like what has happened. Like their president is like stealing classified documents. The Supreme Court is like doing all these crazy rulings against reproductive justice and all of this stuff. So it's like there's mass shootings multiple times a day in this country. And they want to like distract from all of that. And the way to do that is to say, oh, look, drag queens are groomers and pedophiles, and this is what they're doing to your kids. It's all a distraction.
I mean, it's just like, okay, so we're not talking about actual violence happening in schools, but let's actually attack this completely innocent.
Well, exactly. Like, what's traumatizing kids more? Having to do active shooter drills in school? Like, when we were kids, we did fire drills, which were very
tornado drills. Yeah. And, you know.
But an active shooter drill is like mind-boggling to me. That, like, my ex-sister-in-law lives in Amsterdam, and she always says like they don't want to move back because they have 4 kids between the ages of like 5 and 13. And she's like, I don't worry when my kids bike to school every morning, like by themselves. We feel safe. She was like, I don't have to worry about them getting killed in school because it's just not a thing here. And I was like, what a crazy thing that a parent has to think like, oh, I'm sending my kid to school or to the mall or to the movies or to the theater. And even us as adults, like, it's so crazy that like whenever I go into, and I notice myself doing this, whenever I go to the theater or a movie theater or a big shopping complex or any of those things, the first thing I do is look like, where's the exit?
Yeah.
How quickly can I get to the exit? And we shouldn't be living like that. So all of this noise is a distraction from, like you said, actual issues that are impacting people traumatically.
Exactly. And I think that's a great way for us to kind of lead into talking about your own political advocacy and running for New York City Council. I just want to hear more about that. Like, what inspired you to do that and your journey with that?
I got involved in local politics, several years ago, and I just felt like, as queer people, we were always represented, and this is no shade to the queer people who were in office in our city council before. They were great, and a lot of them endorsed my campaign, and I was very proud to have their support. But it was always just like gays and lesbians, which is great. We love the gays and lesbians. Work. Yeah. We stan. But there was never non-binary representation or trans representation in our city council and in very few governing bodies across the country. So I was excited to be the first non-binary candidate for city office in New York and the first drag artist, and that is one part of who I am. But I'm also a gig worker who works in the nightlife industry, and I know what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck. And a lot of people, not just in our industry, but a lot of people relate to that in this city. Taxi drivers, people who work in the service industry, people who work in bodegas, or people who clean your home, or so many different industries are paycheck to paycheck gig workers without access to benefits or protect, like paid sick leave or maternity leave or paternity leave or hazard pay or workers' comp or any of those things. So that was a huge platform issue I ran on because I had that experience as somebody who lived it. And
because so often in politics, it's the voice. There's not a lot of voices that actually represent the people that are the majority of the people that you're representing. It's like, not everybody wearing a suit and tie knows the intricacies of my life and my work. And I think that's why people like AOC and things are very popular, because it's somebody that actually lived an experience that I can relate to and understands the issues that I actually need help with.
Absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, politicians should be helping, not trying, to make it about themselves.
Very that. Very that.
Period.
It's just kind of like, I also am not super into like career politicians who just like keep running for the sake of keeping a job, or people who keep running for office when they don't win one because they just want to be in power. And like people constantly ask me like, are you going to run again? Are you going to run again? And I'm like, well, I don't know. It depends on like, what is the office? What is the climate of what's happening? Can
you make a change?
Am I suited for that position at that time? And, I did consider running for city council again, but I'm going through a divorce, and I was like, this is not the time to do it. But yeah, I think it's like when people just keep running for different offices for the sake of doing it, I'm like, what is your intention for running for this? Is it because you want to like have this title that will get you a higher office at some point or whatever? Or is it because you actually want to do the work and you give a shit? Or sorry,
you can swear.
Okay. It's what is your intention? And my intention was to do the most amount of good for the most amount of people. And that's why I ran.
And do you feel that in running, there was a lot of support or obviously from the community, but from a lot of outside people in the community? Like how did people really, what was your kind of experience in the actual running of it?
Well, whenever you run for office, you're going to have people who love you, and then you're going to have people who hate you. Yeah. And because I was a drag artist who's non-binary, there's 51 city council seats in New York. Sure, like local neighborhood press stuff focused on whoever was running in their district, but most people, you don't really know, unless you're like very ingrained in like local politics. Most people don't know who's running in like a district 10 miles away from them in another borough, right? Yeah. Our campaign, because of its like uniqueness of being a drag queen, got a lot of city press and national press and was very much put under a microscope in a way that like kind of like it was put under a microscope similarly to like a congressional candidate, which is like rare for a city council race. And so, there was a lot of people who, of course, were like we raised more money than anybody else there was 12 candidates. We raised the most money out of any campaign in our district, and we had the most volunteers out of any campaign in our district. And we did the most like street visibility and phone banking and stuff, and it worked. We came with ranked choice voting. We came in second place in number one votes. Wow. And unfortunately, we as ranked choice went on, we fell back. But the reason is because a lot of people who ranked the person who won number one put me number two. But if they're not like eliminated, then those votes don't go to me.
Yes.
But to be like the underdog candidate and to come in second place for number one votes, it was monumental. And but of course there's a lot of people who like didn't like that I was running, and that's fine. If I had won, I would still gladly represent them and their issues and fight for them, because that's what the job entails. Whether you vote for me or not, my job is to represent you fairly and equally. We touched on a lot of really important issues that I'm really proud of, a police budget that's severely inflated, education that is severely underfunded, especially in low income Black and brown parts of the district, housing that is out of control, and how landlords are taking advantage of tenants, and making sure that we're not allowing people to lose their homes because of rising cost of living in this city. Environmental justice on the local level. Our city, like, look at what's happening in Reese Housing right now. There's arsenic in their water.
Oh my God.
Like, what the fuck?
Like how?
Exactly. So it's things like that. Like, we're still recovering from Hurricane Sandy, which was how many years ago? And we're not prepared for the next storm like that. So environmental justice is very much an issue in our city, and most low-income housing is built on the water. So they're the people who are going to be impacted the most. Yeah. So those are the issues we ran on, and I was really proud of that, to center, like, yes, we got all the attention because of who I am, but we were able to use that attention to pivot to center on the issues that we were actually fighting for.
Yeah. And even, it's not always about winning. It's about just putting it out there so that people can actually know that that's what's happening. And I think for me, I was super inspired just because of the visibility and putting yourself out there, and,
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I read this article after the election that was talking about the different wins across the city. And then they were like, and the way they worded it was like so kind of like screwed up to me. They were like, and like the high profile campaigns that were like the losers. And I was like, work. But I was like, and I like tweeted or something about it. And I was like, I don't think our campaign was a losing campaign at all. We might not have gotten the seat but it wasn't a losing campaign at all, because we really were able to talk to people about issues that were important. And a lot of the things that we were fighting for are now things that are being presented as legislation, and things that weren't talked about before, or in a very popular way. So I'm really proud that our campaign was able to like push these ideals, different ideals forward. And I get messages all the time from like young kids who are like, oh, I'm non-binary and I never thought I would see myself represented in politics. I had somebody who volunteered in our campaign. They lived in Massachusetts and they would join our Zooms to do phone banking. And they sent me a message one day and they were like, I just want to tell you, like, I am joining these Zooms from like a facility because I tried to kill myself because I'm trans and my family didn't accept me. And I read about your campaign and I could not believe that there was someone like us running for office. And they were like, your campaign has made me not want to die. I have hope. And I was like,
I mean, Marti, I would have messaged you, 13-year-old me was totally thinking, because I, as a young person, was so into politics and public service. And I was such a advocate for community service. And as I got older, I furthered myself from it because I was like, well, there's no place for me. I can't be outwardly queer and like being in this space. Like it's not for me. And
we have to be unapologetically queer. Like, look at what's happening with the Biden appointed this guy Dimitri, who's an incredible doctor, to head up the monkeypox kind of crisis that we're going through, particularly the queer community. And now, like, the crazy alt-right people are like sharing all these pictures of him, like with like somebody with a puppy mask or him in a harness or leather at like a club. And I'm like, so what? So he likes to go to like fun leather kink parties. Great. He also is a brilliant doctor who knows what he's doing and can really help people. There's somebody else who, my friend Sam, who was appointed by the president to head up, I can't remember what department it is, but they're like a head of some big department. I'm blanking out what it is. But they like do drag sometimes, and they wear heels and like feminine clothing, like to the office, and they're like going after them. And I'm like, why do you fucking care what somebody wears? They're a brilliant scientist. Like, they're a brilliant scientist. It's like, who knows like an incredible understanding of like nuclear physics or something like that, and I'm sure that none of these assholes tweeting, they don't know anything about monkeypox or science, or they don't know anything about nuclear physics or anything behind that, but they want to criticize these people. We have to be unapologetically queer and who we are, and say what you want about the Biden administration. Like, good on them for appointing these people.
Yeah, because just because somebody expresses themselves physically or in what they wear or culturally, because in our culture, a lot of these parties and these different, fetish things, it's just a part of our culture. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, you then have pictures of a certain president's son murdering 6 crocodiles.
Oh, that picture made me mad.
I mean, I'm like, okay, so that's it's just so wild to me.
Or like they want to shame these people, and this is not shaming for this at all, because I'm a big like, listen, my nudes are out there, like, work, bitch. But like, everybody's like, oh, like, they're shaming these people for like going to whatever these events are, but then they're like praising Melania Trump, who like very openly posed nude. Nothing wrong with that. She looks great in the picture, slay. But like, the double standard and the hypocrisy is so strong. And that's the issue. Like, the hypocrisy and the double standard, and just it's wild to me. But representation matters. It's so important. And I do a lot of out of town gigs, and I always have people coming up to me at those gigs, you know, I've had a lot of young people say that they've been inspired to run for office and have run for office because of our campaign. And so like if a newspaper wants to say, oh, we're a losing campaign, work, bitch, we're not. We did incredible work. And the work continues. Like the advocacy doesn't stop. Just because the election is over doesn't mean the work ends.
Exactly. And the representation is something that I've talked about a little bit on this podcast before, because Marty and I were both at this gala for an LGBT organization called Encircle together that builds homes and places for young people to have a space to be themselves, or if they've been kicked out by their families in Utah and in very, very, for lack of a better word, conservative states and places. And I was, of course, posting because I was wearing the most fabulous feeling myself. And I haven't had a viral moment like this in a minute. And of course, there was so much love, outpouring of love, but the amount of hate of the people that cannot wrap their head around a quote unquote boy wearing a dress, I just was blown away. And I live in a bubble sometimes and I forget how this is extreme in so many ways. And I just keep coming back to the necessity of us being out there, of putting it out there, because there are younger people that are feeling so ostracized and so alone. And if we can just keep sharing and putting ourselves out there, even if it makes us feel anxious at times, overwhelmed, I mean, I feel like it's my job. It's my thing, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I sometimes feel pressure about it, but I also it's a big responsibility to be someone who, like, a lot of people are looking at, right? Looking for representation, or looking for, how can I take that person down? You know, it goes, and that happens, you know, as many people are supportive, just as many people are not. But I also know that all of that is just noise. And at the end of the day, there's some little kid or some teenager in Massachusetts who wanted
or some 35-year-old,
or some 35-year-old, instances, whoever it is, you know? And it's I don't know. I just think every queer person should just be loudly, unapologetically themselves at all times. As scary as that can be.
And that, because I've even had some people recently, you know, twice my age, be like, this has helped me become more authentic and seeing myself in these spaces. And I'm so reminded, because I just get in my head and second guess things and feel like I'm just extra.com all the time. And then I'm like, oh, wow, just the importance of putting it out there if you have the voice and you're able to.
It's so important. And before I was married, I got married in my 20s and I'm now 35. And before I was married and before I had met my now ex-husband, I had a lot of fear about being effeminate and dating and sex and how people viewed me and all this stuff. And now I'm a bitch, I'm queer and I'm living my best life. And and that's because I see a lot of people, you know, who are just wearing what they want. You're a great example of this. You've empowered me in a lot of ways, because it's just you know, we can wear whatever we want. If it makes you feel sexy, if it makes you feel good about yourself, wear it. Who cares? Wear it. You know, we get one life and that life can end at any moment and without warning. So live unabashedly yourself. And I know that there's places in this country and in this world where that's easier said than done, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So I feel a great responsibility to live my big, queer, authentic life. So those people in those places where they can't do that can say, oh my God, there are people like me who are fighting for me, who believe in me being myself. And hopefully that gives them a glimmer of hope. And then maybe they can start to do that in their community and make some change in their community. Or they can find community there, you know, or find community online, connect with people, you know, because we as queer people have to be there for each other. And then we as queer people, you and me as white queer people, have to stand up and say, like, there is racism within our own community. What are we doing to protect Black and brown trans women who are being murdered and attacked? What are we doing to protect trans people in queer spaces or people of different races in queer spaces? You know, this is like a big thing. I don't see it so much like I used to, but it is still a thing where people write on their Grindr, like, no Asians. Like, what the fuck is that about? Like, you're just openly being racist in your Grindr. Like, knock it off, you know? Like,
because if we don't push the change, then nobody's going to do it. Like, we come from a lineage of having to fight for every single thing that we have. And like, people fought and literally gave their lives protesting and fighting for me to be strutting around like I'm doing.
Yes. And like,
you know,
everybody now is like, oh, I love drag. And then they'll like be like racist to the queens of color who are on Drag Race. And I'm like, do you not know that the first drag queen in America, William Dorsey Swan, was somebody who had been enslaved? Like, know your history. Do you not know? Everybody's like, oh, it's so great. Pete Buttigieg, so great. Yes, great work. We love representation. But also, like, know the history that the first openly queer person to run for office was a Latinx drag artist in San Francisco in 1961, Jose Sarria. Know your history. It's because of Black and brown trans women that queer liberation was even something that began, you know? So it's we have to know our history and respect it and continue to fight for those who fought for us.
Yeah, because you also see the pride, you know, pride has become such a commercialized thing. Yeah, and it just kind of completely misses the point of what we're trying to do here. And
yeah.
Dot.
Very that.
Pride. And with that, I really want to talk as well because, you know, you had mentioned, I've always felt it's only been the past couple years that stepping into my power and my gender, whatever you want to call it, that I've actually been able to find more of my authentic self and my true happiness. Because I very much so felt as a young queer person that I had to be masculine, otherwise nobody would love me. I mean, that was literally that was all the images, all the imagery. And I think that's another important part of my work now, is to just put out there that you can be whoever you want to be, and people are drawn to your love and your authenticity, not
whoever you want to be. And also allow yourself to evolve as a person. Like, I'm 35. Who I am at 35 is not who I was at 30 or 25 or 20 or 15. You know, I've learned a lot of shit, and I guarantee I have a lot more to learn throughout my life, which is exciting. It's exciting to learn. And when you make a fuck up, learn from it and know, okay, now when you know better, you do better. You know, that famous quote from Maya Angelou. And, you know, when I came out as non-binary, I was super fucking scared. And, but I always said, you know, so like, I remember being a little kid, in my kitchen, and my mom was in the kitchen, and I was like, I don't know, like 5 or 6 years old. And I have this distinct memory of looking up at her and being like, I think I was born in the wrong body. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, I don't know. I just think I was born in the wrong body. Like, what? And I'd never heard that expression or anything like that. At 5. Like, where would I hear that? On my farm in Catholic school.
Pre-internet,
right?
BTW.
Yeah. I mean, I'm old. No, there was no internet then. So then when I came out at 14, my only reference point was like Jack on Will and Grace. And I was like, okay, well, I guess this is what I am. And
the butt of everybody's jokes. That's all that queer representation was.
And I was like, I guess that's what I am, work. And so like I came out, but I still felt this like missing piece. And so as I got older and language evolved and we started like talking about gender fluidity and gender being a spectrum and a construct and all these things. And I really started to like, you know, in therapy and through meditation, and I go to AA and like through like my work in AA and like doing the steps and like all that stuff, I was like, oh, that thing I said to my mom when I was 5 and that missing piece that I still felt when I came out, like it wasn't fully connected, even though I'd come out, like there was still something not syncing up there. I finally had the language for it. And I was like, oh, I'm not male or female. I fall in the middle. Work. How amazing. Yeah. But I was super scared of that, you know? But then once I came out again, you know, later in my life at 30, I think is when I came out as non-binary, 30 or 31, and I'm 35 now. But when I did that, I was able to really be like, oh, it makes sense.
Yeah.
I get it now.
Yeah. And that self or exploration is so important. And I feel like people kind of lose it and don't understand that we are constantly evolving and constantly figuring out who we are at all times. And you know, the more that you do, the more you learn to like really love yourself.
And what's great is like years down the line, like maybe I'll discover something else about myself.
Exactly.
How exciting.
Yeah. For me, a lot of my work as well comes from me trying to give exactly what I need to myself. And, you know, I talk about this a little bit on the podcast before, but just my own struggle with self-worth and with, you know, treating myself with loving kindness is because I need it myself. Because, you know, the reason why I create movement and create meditation for people is because it's what I need. It's the reminders that I need myself, the loving kindness that I give to myself. And that's why I feel so passionate about bringing it to other people.
Well, I mean, we have to be kind to ourselves. Our inner saboteur is strong, honey. You know, like self-doubt and anxiety and self-deprecation are like a huge thing, and insecurities about finances or your body, or what other people think of you, or where am I at in my life compared to other people, like all that shit that we shouldn't care about, but we do
obsess over. I mean, my therapist could write a book on just this part of my life.
Like we shouldn't care about it, but we do. And then sometimes it becomes super, super heavy, and you have to be kind to yourself. Like I, you know, was diagnosed with bipolar 2 disorder and depression and anxiety. And I was like, oh my God, like this is fuck, you know, and I tried to commit suicide this year. Not great. Like, thank God I'm not in that space anymore. Like I got my meds adjusted, whatever. But like all those things, you have to be kind to yourself and say, okay, being diagnosed with this stuff, it's no different than being diagnosed with diabetes. It's no different than being diagnosed with, you know, name a disease. Your brain is a muscle and an organ that can have things happen to it. So we as a society put so much shame and stigma around these things when actually this is a part of our body. You know, your body goes through things. So I had to really, and still do, tell myself, like, there is nothing wrong with you because of this, you know? Okay, so I went through a bad couple of months. It got really heavy. Tried to hang myself. Super scary. Glad I didn't succeed at it. But like, that happens to a lot of people. And even if you don't try to do the act, more people than not think about that at some point in their life. So if we don't talk about it, and we don't normalize that this is something people go through, then we're all just going to sit in our shit and suffer and not get help. And then possibly the outcome could be really drastic, right? So we have to talk about these things, about being kind to ourselves, reaching out to others, sharing how you're feeling, knowing that you're not alone, knowing that it is normal to go through these things, and that we have to find moments of like, whether meditating for you is just like taking like 3 minutes in the shower to like pause and breathe, or having like an hour-long meditation. Everybody's different. Or maybe it's reading a book, maybe it's going for a walk, listening to a podcast, whatever it is, but taking those moments of self-care so you can movement, you know, you talked about movement, dance, yoga, running, whatever it is for you. It's so important because we have to I'm not speaking about religion, I'm speaking about spirituality. They're two totally different things. So for me, it's about finding like a spiritual connectedness so I don't get into those dark negative places, so I can quickly pull myself out of them when I am in those dark negative places, and not being afraid to ask for help, because there is no shame in that. And I think we put such a stigma on that. I don't know if I just completely went off track on a tangent, but
oh my God, no, this is everything. This is this is the bones of it all. No, I feel the same way, and I feel like we are trying to make it seem like all healing is the same, and healing is not the same. And even if it worked for you a year ago, it doesn't work for you now, or it doesn't matter. But focusing on your healing is the number, it's about, I talk about this a lot with my work too, whole body wellness. It's not, the body, or, the musculature of the body, the outwardness has nothing to do with the wellness of your whole body.
You can be the most fit person, but girl, if your spirit's fucked, like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
Or if you're miserable, it doesn't matter. Nothing matters. It only matters about you. What you were saying, achieving that spiritual grace and arriving at that place where you can attach yourself to the real essence of why we are on this earth, which is to live in loving kindness for ourselves and flow through to other people.
Yes. And sometimes it's really hard to get to that place, and that's okay. Also, like, don't beat yourself up if you can't get there.
It's okay to lean into that, because guess what you're doing is then you're just leaning into making yourself feel bad.
Yeah.
Which is what we're trying to move away from.
But like, also lean into the discomfort. Like I mentioned earlier, like I'm like in the thick of a divorce, like right now, and it sucks. It sucks. Like, if anybody's listening and you've been divorced, like, you get it. It sucks so bad. But I'm leaning into the discomfort of it, as hard as that is. Like, leaning into like, okay, today I feel really heartbroken. Today I feel really sad. Today I feel really angry, or today I feel relief. Today I feel freedom. Today I feel acceptance or joy. Whatever those feelings are in that day, I try to lean into them and know, like, whatever this feeling is, negative or good, like it's only for now, lean into it and work on the acceptance of it. Like, okay, this has happened. This is a pivotal moment of my life. Now, how can I turn this trauma of the ending of this marriage into something good for myself? So for me, and everybody's different, but for me, it's leaning into tapping into self-love and giving self-affirmations when I don't believe it. Looking at, like, and this is like cliche also, but looking at myself in the mirror and being like, you are sexy, you are desirable, you are smart, intelligent, funny, kind, flawed. Like, you are like all of these things, and leaning into that and knowing that, like, my marriage wasn't a failure, and that I'm not a failure because of it, and connecting with the spirituality of it, of knowing, like, this is just for now. And because of all of this, I will learn a lot of lessons, and I will hopefully grow from those lessons so I can be someone who loves myself. And in loving myself, I'm able to put that love into other people, whether it's platonic friendships or sexual partners or whoever I end up with next, if that is something that the universe deems will happen for me, right? And like, I don't know, that's what it's all about, like tapping into the discomfort and like and working through it so you can get to the other side in a positive way.
You have to meet yourself where you are.
Yeah.
And you have to have an introspection so that you know how you're feeling. Ask yourself, how am I feeling? Like, actually, how am I feeling? Instead of just covering things up. And for me, a lot, I'm like, I'm fine. Everything is, I'm fine. No, I'm fine. I'm fine.
I told you before we started recording, I had therapy right before this recording. And my therapist, who I love, was like, okay, I feel like you're just telling me like a story. How do you feel He was like, I get, like, he was like, yes. Like, your stories are great. I hear you. How does that make you feel? What are you, like, what is going on? And don't tell me, like, the telenovela of it. Like, what is going on inside? With how is your body registering this?
Mm-hmm.
And I paused and I just started crying. And I was like, well, I feel
like that.
Yeah. I was like, I feel. And then, like, my throat got a little tight and my shoulder. And he was like, okay, your throat sounds a little tight. I see you tensing up. So what is this feeling? How are you registering it in your body? How is your body connecting to these emotions? And then when I talked through it, my body started to relax. My voice came back the way it normally is, because I was able to, like, release that feeling in the moment and say, you know what? I'm telling you the story about how I feel angry, but how I actually feel is, like, really heartbroken. And I'm not allowing myself to feel heartbroken because it makes everything that's going on, it's easier to be angry.
Yeah.
But heartbroken, I have to tap into that, like, vulnerable, instead of just being like, I hate him, this sucks, like, fuck him, like, you know. But when I say, oh, I'm heartbroken for the life together lost, I'm heartbroken for the good years we had together, I'm heartbroken for not knowing what the future holds, you know. But when I was able to, like, say that out loud instead of it, like, projecting it as anger, my body, like, released in a way where I was able to, like, cry about it and say, okay, that's how I'm feeling. And that's okay. And then I came out of that session being like, all right, I tapped into it. I feel better about it. Now, what is my plan of action for the day? I'm going to go to this podcast. I'm going to have fun doing it. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to go to the gym because I want to release some endorphins. I'm going to go to my AA meeting and connect with some sober fellows. And then I'm going to come home and I'm going to put my stories on and I'm going to fall asleep and get a good night's rest. And that's, like, now my plan of action for the day. And that relieves so much tension, knowing, okay, I'm going to practice self-care and self-love. So when I go out into the world, I'm not projecting, like, anger and snapping at people. Instead, I can say, okay, I feel heartbroken today. I acknowledge it. I accept it. And I'm not going to internalize it, and I'm not going to take it out on other people. And that's, like, so freeing.
Yeah, because when you accept how you're feeling, you can actually move past it. It's the blocking things. It's the blocking. It's the holding on to that perpetuates it and keeps it going.
Yes.
But yeah, the moment that we accept exactly how we're feeling, that we can honestly just live in that uncomfortableness and accept what it is, accept that it will pass, and then we can move on from there.
Absolutely.
Then we can feel different.
Absolutely.
I love it. Well, that's a really beautiful, beautiful place, Marti, to finish our conversation. I cannot thank you enough for joining me. And where can people find you as well? We'll link everything in the show notes.
Oh, I'm on the Twitter and
the
Instagram, and, like, I have a TikTok, but I'm old and I don't know how to work it.
We're working on that. It's a reboot.
Yeah, we're working on it. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I'm super grateful for this dialogue, and thank you for inviting me. And I look forward to joining you on the dance floor again very soon.
Exactly. Marti and I have had a bit of a resurgence with nightlife lately. So we're enjoying ourselves there.
We're enjoying it.
Yes. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Again, it's such a pleasure to be with you all and to bring these really, really important conversations. So I really appreciate it. And thank you, Marti.
Thank you.
And have a beautiful rest of your day, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you to our entire team behind the scenes at Glow. I'm so grateful for your care and commitment to serving our members around the world. Thank you to our teachers for so beautifully sharing your gifts and talents. I'm also grateful to our lovely community of Glow members. You've supported us since 2008, and because of you, we get to continue to do the work we love. It's the combined support of our team, our teachers, and our community that grants me the privilege to continue to bring you the Glow podcast. Thank you to Lee Schneider at Red Cup Agency for production support, and the beautiful music you're hearing now is by Carrie Rodriguez and her husband Luke Jacobs. And remember, take care of yourself because our world needs you. Thank you for coming on this journey with me. You can find the Glow podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or glo.com/podcast, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'm Derek Mills.